Welcome to Small Talk with Raincraft. I'm Subha, a leadership and executive coach.
And I'm Hasita. I'm a marketing strategist.
We're just two people who love to talk
and love to learn.
And this is us being curious about the world around us.
Join us.
Welcome, Small Talkers. Today, we have Shailaja Vishwanath, a content strategist and business coach. Through her venture, Intentional and Creative Business, Shailaja helps bloggers, writers, business owners, and creators build an organic audience for their work. With over 13 years of experience in the digital space, Shailaja ran a very popular parenting blog, and now, along with gentle productivity tips for intentional living, she is empowering a lot of small businesses as they tackle the challenges of being online and running a business. Hope you enjoy our conversation. Hi, Shailaja. Welcome to Small Talk. So happy to have you here.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I've really been looking forward to this because I'm an ardent follower of all your content on social, and I've been really looking forward to bringing you to our listeners today.
Thank you. That really makes me feel happy. Thank you.
I'm going to start with a question, and the answer to this, I think, will set the foundation for our conversation. You have been in the content development space for more than close to 2 decades now, right?
I guess so, yes. About 15 years, yes, that's right.
Yes. Okay. So who is Shailaja today? And how is she different from Shailaja of, let's say, 5-6 years back? And even the Shailaja of 1 year back?
So if I were to talk about the difference in my journey, I would say there's been a lot of small things at the time which have kind of snowballed into very significant changes in terms of how I approach my business, how I approach the idea of content creation, how I approach blogging itself. And I would say 5 years ago, 6 years ago, this was before I actually launched my business. I was just a parenting blogger. I should not say just, I was a parenting blogger about everything to do with parenting, bringing up my daughter, life lessons, and all of that content is still there on my website. I've not removed any of it. But around 4 years ago, I had this inclination to shift gears to some extent. There was a point in my life where I felt that I've learned a lot through the blogging space. Plus what I had learned as part of my job, I was an editor for an online website. And I felt that I could marry both these things and move back into coaching. Because prior to blogging, which is something I started in 2007, I was a trainer. So I used to train students for competitive exams like the MBA, the CAT, the GMAT, the GRE. And I really missed that kind of social interaction that I would have with people in terms of learning from each other, teaching them what I knew and, getting the benefit of the feedback in that sense. So I felt coaching would be able to bridge that gap. So I would continue creating content, but I would also be able to teach other people how to create content. And that's how it all started. So 4 years ago, when I jumped into the business space of coaching and getting people to understand the idea of content and content creation, social media presence and all of it, I have to be honest, I kind of really jumped into the deep end. And I found myself floundering because there was so much out there in terms of what should I focus on? Should I have an email list? Should I be working on SEO? Should I be doing Pinterest? Should I be on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn? So it became a question of where am I going to spend my attention and where am I going to really, let things go? And as a type A person, or as a recovery type A person now, I should say, I really wanted to be the best at everything. Wanted to make sure that I was perfect at Pinterest, perfect at Facebook, perfect at SEO and all of it. And let's face it, that's just not possible. I mean, if people are perfect at all of it, they're probably having a team behind them, helping them in some way or the other. And about a year and a half ago, I would say, I was at this point in my business where I felt that I was too overwhelmed. And I felt that maybe it's time to either shutter the business or think about taking it in a new direction. And that was when I came across a lot of valuable content in the shape of my own coach, George Cao, and kind of concepts he started talking about, which is a very different approach to content, very different approach to marketing, and a very heart-based and authentic approach to just connecting with people. And I really resonated with it because this was the reason I actually started the business. It's just that following all of these other what I call mainstream marketing strategies, I'd lost my way. So finding my way back to who I authentically am and who I can originally be in terms of how I can help other people in a similar boat is what brought me back to coaching the way it should be. So today, the Shailaja of today, as you asked, is somebody who takes a very relaxed and a stress-free approach to content creation, social media or digital presence. I am in fact what I call a digital minimalist. I barely use any apps on my phone. Most of my content work happens on the laptop and only at set times of the day. And there is no stress. There is no worry about where the next paycheck is going to come from, where the next client is going to come from. There's a gentle rhythm that has fallen into place, and there's a kind of trust in the universe, if I can put it that way, which I feel has really helped me be a little more comfortable with this idea of both having it as a business and having it as a content creation platform.
And I think that calmness really comes out in everything that you share, right? Whether it's a blog post or whether it's a newsletter or just a simple Instagram post, right? I think that's what really brings a lot of us to follow you and what are you doing, because we are all maybe still a few steps behind in that type A who's not yet let go of so many things and is trying to figure out that I've also, as a small business owner, started about 6 years ago, made these mistakes, right? Jumped into every platform, thought I need to be present everywhere. At some point, you're just copy pasting or replicating your content on all platforms just to be present. And then a new platform comes up and you're like, oh God, now what do I do? What do I do differently? Because I'm just saying the same thing, hoping to attract different people, and that won't work. So I think definitely I've seen the change that your content has taken in terms of what you're sharing. The calmness and the very gentle pace at which you encourage all of us to embrace social, digital content. Because end of the day, yes, we do need to be out there a little bit. How much we can each decide, but most of us are not evolved enough to stay away from it.
I think the situation here is you don't have to stay away from it as long as it's serving you as a tool and not as a distraction. I think people need to find that level of comfort that they have with it. See, for some people, spending 2 hours on social media is an actual job where they could be social media managers, they could be managing their clients' accounts. So for them, it's not a distraction because they're creating the content, they're creating the graphics, they're writing out the captions, they're researching their niche mates, and they're putting it all out there. So for them, it's more like I have a list of things to do, let me get it done and then let me move on. Because for them, they're using it as a business. And that's what I'm trying to tell people. So as a solo business owner, if you are handling your own content and you don't have a social media manager, and you only have the one account to manage, you don't need to be present on the platform 5 hours a day, 6 hours a day. You need to be there maybe 15 minutes a day in the morning where you post one piece of content, and then maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes later in the day, or even the next day when you get back and respond to comments. So that's the rhythm that I recommend, especially for solo entrepreneurs and small business owners who manage their own content, who are putting out their own content, connecting with their audience on a one-on-one basis. This is a more comfortable rhythm that I find people will be able to adapt to their own situations.
And it probably lends itself to a lot more authentic content, right? Because you're there when you are in a mind space to be there. You're on social media because you've set that time, you've thought about it, you know what you're going to do. So what you're sharing also naturally becomes something that you enjoy a little more and more authentic by itself.
Exactly. In fact, one of the things I tell my clients is I ask them to separate the art of creation from the art of posting. You don't have to post everything the minute it pops into your head. That's the problem with, or rather that is a challenge that social media presents, because it gives you that sense of instant validation. It gives you that sense of instant feedback. And so we can get addicted to that. So my recommendation to my clients is separate creation from posting. So create every single day, create whenever the inspiration strikes you. You may be going on a walk, an idea will hit you, just quickly stop and, jot down the idea. or you could be cooking and something could strike you. You just have to pick up your phone, drop a quick note to say, this is what I want to expand upon. So that's creation. And then posting with intention is when you've had time to reflect on the idea and you want to really think about how you want to present it. And how can you present it in such a way that it isn't just self-serving, but it is serving your audience? I think that is the beauty of intentional posting. So we are not just blindly posting. One of the reasons I don't post very often on Instagram stories is this particular reason, because it doesn't lend itself to intentionality. Stories by its nature are built into that ethos and that fabric of 24 hours. So it's a timed, it's a limited format. And so people are tempted to, post every waking thought. So the idea is, how do we train the brain to understand that that isn't necessary? You don't have to post everything the minute it pops into your head. Rather, take your time with it, reflect on it, see if it is useful, see if it will benefit somebody else. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be yourself. You can, of course, be yourself. It's just that adding that little layer of intention before you put something out there really enhances your appreciation of both the content creation process and the content posting process. So you don't feel that, okay, I'm on social media 24/7 or I'm on social media all the time, posting, and nobody is responding. So you have that space, as I call it, to allow a piece of content to kind of find its legs, let people discover it, let people discuss it, let people get back to you with any questions. So it gives that space, which is extremely important, I feel, for all of us, especially in the digital era, because most of us don't allow ourselves that time to just sit still and not do anything. Social media and technology by default, and I'm talking about handheld technology, so anything which you basically carry around in your pocket, by default brings in the understanding or the implication that you have to be always connected, always online, and it is up to you to say, I'm going to take a different path. I'm not going to follow the dictum of what the technology giants or the social media platforms are expecting of. So I think that's very important.
Now, makes a lot of sense. And this is a very, very common struggle that I hear from fellow entrepreneurs in any kind of WhatsApp group of women running their own businesses or solopreneurs. This is a very real challenge that I have a business to run and then I need to put information about it out there. Right? I have to build that brand. I have to market myself. I have to market the products that I'm making. And that sucks away so much time and energy because it's seen as a huge task and a huge chore that is distracting them from the core business. And it also tends to bring you down that, oh God, I'm spending 4 hours a day on this. I'm still not getting results. It's 4 hours that I've taken out of what I should be doing for my core business. But I need to be here. What do I do? And then I'll see frantic messages for, does anyone know a social media manager? Does anyone know who can help me create content? Because it's become this huge mountain that needs to somehow be crossed on a daily basis.
That's the challenge, isn't it? See, the problem is social media by its very nature implies that speed is of the essence, when it actually isn't the case. I always ask people to remember how it was when they started learning any subject for the very first time or any skill for the very first time. It is practically impossible for you to become an expert by day 30 after starting a skill from scratch. You cannot become an expert at, say, playing the guitar in 30 days. You cannot. I mean, unless you're a gifted prodigy who's kind of born with the guitar, it's just impossible. You have to go through the steps. You have to learn the chords. You have to know the placement of the fingers. You have to know how to pluck the strings. You have to know all of those basics before you can even hope to string a tune together. Then comes the idea of putting a song together and then a performance and then gaining mastery of a level beyond what you can anticipate. So the only reason I tell people not to worry so much about timelines is because all of these timelines are artificially created. And the unfortunate thing is, most of the so-called success stories that we see online are only of people who have managed something out of the box. It's that one incident of going viral or that one incident of one particular post taking off. But it isn't consistent. That is the first challenge. The second thing that I tell people is you don't know about all the backstory that has happened related to that particular person's success. You don't know how many failed businesses that person has had before. You don't know how much of a network that person has already built thanks to an existing business or a previous business. So they're using all of that leverage to get them to where they are today. So if you compare somebody else's 150th step to your first step, it's always going to be a situation of you trying to play catch up, and you're always going to fall behind. Whereas if I say I'm perfectly happy being at step number 10, and I'm going to do what step number 10 expects me to do and not what step number 150 is right now. And I think that's the most important thing. So when I teach my clients, especially a lot of them, all of them are solo business owners. They don't have a team. They don't have a social media manager. They don't have people handling anything themselves. I tell them I'm giving you all these tools, but I don't want you to tackle all of them at once because that's setting yourself up for failure. So the idea of the tools is they're all present in front of you. So you decide what you're going to start with. I liken it to walking into, say, a test kitchen for the first time. Let us say you go into a test kitchen to attend a class on cooking, and you see all this array of knives and chopping boards and blenders and everything laid out in front of you. You're not going to be picking up all of it at the same time, isn't it? You're going to start by maybe, slicing an onion, maybe. And then if it is a chef who's helping you become a chef, one of the things a chef is supposed to do well is chop onions fast. And not just chop it fast, we chopped it fine. And and I remember one particular chef talking about this in a video. So the way you chop an onion for a recipe is extremely specific. So how you chop an onion for, say, Amritsari chole is very different from how you would chop it for an omelette. Because of the finesse that is required in each of these things is a very distinct quality. So you cannot expect to become an expert in chopping onions 3 different ways on the very first day. Even if you were to become an expert, you would still have to practice it 5 to 10 to 15 times to get it at the same level of speed and skill that the head chef is teaching you. So that is what I tell people who ask me, how do I ensure that I can sit back and relax and let the work speak for itself? So you have to put in some amount of effort in the beginning, yes, but not so much that you're pushing yourself to the brink of burnout or overwhelm, because that's defeating the purpose of actually being in a digital space.
I think for us, it is not only trying to learn how to chop the onion 3 different ways, but also expecting that 50, 100, 200 people will clap for us and like what we did and say that we did a really good job. Right?
Exactly. That's a fantastic way of cutting the onions, isn't it? Yeah. So I agree because, and as somebody who has been on social media for the last 14 years now, 12 years now, actually, it took a long time for me to completely let go of the sense of validation. And I've realized that even to all of the tricks and hacks that you read online, which says let go of validation, but I believe that the only absolute way will happen when you are ready to let go of it. In other words, that intention to let go has to come from within. And the intention to let go will come when you find something more fascinating than social media validation. So for people who want to break free from the validation principle, I tell them to find something that gives them unimaginable joy outside of work. So it could be something as simple as, sitting and reading a book. Just sitting and reading an entire book cover to cover in the space of a day is something that even if you don't share it on social media, it's a sense of feeling of success that you have, which is solely for yourself. Or writing an entire blog post of 2,000 words or 5,000 words, which will ultimately give you far more than validation. It will send the right kind of clients your way, it will send the right kind of people your way, and it will kind of affix your authority in the digital space as a person worth following. Social media is fleeting. So I may get 100 likes on a particular post today, but 3 days later, nobody's going to remember that post. They'll say, oh, she wrote about something related to habits or walking or books. It was something I remember. But that's the thing about social media, isn't it? So social media has this tendency to make it seem very important right then and there. And that's the pleasure principle. So how do we move away from the pleasure principle and start building in the delayed gratification principle? And I tell people it's very simple. So think about reading a book versus reading a social media status update. Or, studying for a test and scoring well and that general feeling of achievement over how many comments you got on your last Instagram post. So where is that sense of lasting joy? and find that sense of lasting joy outside of the digital world. Because it's only when we start doing that, we can actually let go of what I call as this pincer grip of technology. Otherwise, it's always going to be there.
Correct. And these platforms are just getting more and more manipulative, if I can use that word, in how they engage with us, right? Instagram said, we won't show you the likes because we know that may help some of you. We'll tell you that you've spent 30-40 minutes on Instagram. We'll remind you. And then now they've added likes to stories. Right? So now one more place where you're chasing numbers, chasing followers, chasing that instant gratification. So it's a never-ending chase, and it's best to step away as in when
Exactly.
you can.
And that is one of the reasons when I teach my social media strategy to my clients, I tell them to focus on that which endures and not that which is fleeting or trending or viral. So this is one reason I don't do Instagram reels at all. I know there are a lot of people who do reels in a very tasteful manner. They convey a lot of value-based content. I'm not denying any of this. But one of the reasons on principle that I do not do reels or anything which says I should follow trend and jump on a bandwagon is because I feel it takes away the value from the messaging itself. So especially of late, in my last, I think, 8 weeks or 10 weeks of Instagram related posts, I've deliberately kept pictures of myself out of the equation. Because Instagram, by definition, allows the algorithm to pick up pictures of people, pets, anything which looks attractive in any and kind of promotes that. So my objective is to move away from that and say, what if I decided not to show my face, put a picture of myself, or put anything on a personal note anywhere, but only focus on the messaging? So will that impact my engagement? And see, I'm a person who likes to experiment. I keep experimenting with no fear of with no fear of the consequences, right? And what has happened is the messaging has continued to stay. It has continued to reach the right kind of people. I have not done anything. And one of the things I don't do is I don't tell people to follow me. I don't tell people to save this post for later. I don't tell people to share this if it resonated with them. Because all of this implies that the reason I'm posting this piece of content is because I'm expecting something from you in return. The reason I am posting Instagram content is because I found it useful for me and I hope it will be useful for you. That's it. There is no hidden agenda. There is no manipulation, if I can put it that way. My objective is I learned something, I found it useful, I want to share it with you. That's it. End of story. And there's a beautiful article called Psychology of Why We Share on social media. I'll probably send you the link so you can add it to the show notes later. And it says, if you notice, a lot of content which becomes viral has a very high emotional quotient to it. And usually, the higher the negative emotional quotient, the higher the value of shares as well. So anything which is anger-inducing, outrage creating, anything which spreads a lot of condemnation, indignation will spread very fast. Whereas the happier things, the softer things, the gentler things will spread more slowly. I'm deliberately focusing on that which will spread more slowly because it has what I call the legacy effect versus the viral effect. People may not remember the exact piece of content which led them to my profile or led them to my blog or led them to my website. But they'll remember that something about what she said resonated with me. And that is what has brought me to this person. Not the fact that she was grabbing eyeballs or creating viral content or creating content with an intention to gain a certain number of 2,500 views or whatever it is. It's more the content itself which is the receptacle and not the virality of it.
And now I'm going to touch upon what you mentioned, right? And I've been following you on social, and that's really how we came to know of each other. And I really do admire the way you're quick to try a lot of new ways of serving your audience, right? And it is truly in service of the audience, not really just new ways for the heck of it, but to see, okay, is this something useful? But you're also equally quick to stop, change, recalibrate. So what drives that?
I have to say, I think it is my understanding of how the growth mindset works. And I learned this myself when I was actually back in 10th grade. That teacher back in 10th grade, for opening me up to the possibilities of trying something and not limiting myself by saying, I can't do this. So let me try. That was what she told. She says, you may not be able to do it. I'm not saying it's a magic pill, but she says, at least you can try. So what trying will do is it will help you understand if it is a limitation in your mind or if it's a limitation in the system, if it's a limitation in the project itself. Because if it's a limitation in the project, you can't do anything. But if it's a limitation in your mind, you can work your way through it. So why should you allow something as silly as a temporary belief to stop you from exploring your greatest potential? I think that's one thing that I've always kept in mind. So this is back when I was 16, so pretty much almost 30 years ago. Yeah. It has stayed with me throughout. So it's helped me really understand. And it also came in very handy when I was teaching students, because I was hired as an instructor for verbal ability and verbal reasoning for all these management exams. But I also ended up teaching logical reasoning and a little bit of data interpretation because I have that mathematics background as well. So we never know when these little turns in the road actually help us on the long path of life. And I think that's something we should never let go of. The ability to grow, the ability to admit that sometimes we could be wrong. And like you said, recalibrate, reassess and say, I tried something. It worked to some extent. This part of it didn't work. So I'm going to just readjust and figure out how things will go from here on out. That's what I think really helps.
That's really powerful, because when your goal is just to give it your best shot and you're saying, listen, all I want to do is try and see where it leads me, rather than saying, okay, I want to do this really well and I want to succeed and I want to be the best in it. And there's that kind of pressure, which then prevents you from rolling back or recalibrating. Because the goal you've set is for something which you feel that if I now don't attain it, I am a failure. Or I have failed, right? But when the goal is just to try and give it your best shot and see where that takes you, then I can see how that helps you say, okay, I tried this. It was really useful for the last 6 months. And now I think it's time to look at something else, right? And as context to the listeners, things that I'm talking about here are really, I've seen you do Facebook groups very intentionally. I've seen you do small group workshops. I've seen you do larger webinars, then small group coaching, 1:1 coaching, different platforms itself, right? There was Pinterest, which was really working well for you. You tried it, it worked well. And there was a point in time where you're able to say, hey, I want to move on. Because the goal is not to be perfect at everything, but kind of give it your best shot. And what is it that serves me now? That's very useful. And really kudos to the teacher who could change a student's belief about math, because that can be so limiting throughout life, in your life.
That's the thing, right? You don't, like you said, you don't have to be perfect at everything right now or at anything at all for that matter. But you may say that, no, for the next 3 years, I'm just going to focus on my health. I'm going to focus on my health. I'm going to make sure that I'm eating better and sleeping better and I'm cooking better, moving better. And if that means that the business maybe takes a slight backseat, meaning I won't earn as much as I would need to if I were putting in 12 hours a week or 16 hours a week, but that's okay because I'm going to be putting in 10 hours a week taking care of my health. Because over and over, what I've realized is once you have health, it's easier to focus on other things in your business, whether that's basic interaction with your customers, delivering what you promised to them. And of course, even otherwise, being a happy human being, I feel all boils down to good health.
You're fully there and available for whatever you want to do. Very true. I'm going to ask you about something that a lot of small brands, small business owners really struggle with, which you do very well, is to be out there in a very transparent and vulnerable way. Right? Because especially I see, and I'm wondering, it's also something that solopreneurs who, let's say, run a product business, right? We are in a service kind of offering. Those who run very, very, very clear product businesses. You're selling jewelry, you're selling apparel, etc., etc. And something that they do ask is, what does it mean for folks like us? What does kind of being intentional, being transparent, being vulnerable, because we just have to showcase our products, right?
So one of my long-term clients is actually, she has a textile business. She has a textile business where she connects directly with the weavers in India So there's no middleman. So she directly sources it from them, sells the products, and most of the profits go directly to the weavers. And she said, my objective is to try to showcase the value of what they are doing. And of course, to keep my business afloat. I'm not going to deny that money is unimportant, but profit is not my primary intention. So people who work with me from this perspective will understand when I teach them that I teach them how to bring that story. So I ask them, see, this is your mission. This is your mission. This is your vision for your business. How are you translating that into your content? Whether you're writing a blog post, whether you're sending out a newsletter, whether you're putting up an Instagram post, are you talking about that? Or are you only saying new product in the stores today? Because how is that any different from the millions of other people showcasing their products and their merchandise? It's not going to be any different, because if you look at most of the product sellers, I'm talking about the general population, most of the general jewelry or art or fabric thing, it's mostly pictures of models, pictures of people wearing it, or pictures of the products themselves, and a small description of what the product is, and then maybe a price mentioned, or they say, send us a direct message for the price. There's nothing wrong with that, but the challenge there is you are literally doing what everybody else is doing. So there's no way for you to stand out in a crowd. There's no way for people to know who is this person running this business. What is it that she stands for? Why is it that So I keep telling people every once in a while, you have to bring your story. You have to bring a piece of yourself into your content. It has to be there, because people don't connect with the product. People connect with the story behind the product. So every single thing. So storytelling is a very integral part of authenticity. Whether that's a service-based business or a product-based business, it doesn't matter. And the more stories you tell, the more stories get shared. So when you write a very heartfelt story about the latest product in your store, maybe you can talk about, if I'm talking about fabrics, for example, I'm talking about this particular weave. Let us say this ikat weave. So let us say I talk about how this ikat weave has made its way from this particular heartland and then into the mainstream, and what is the process that it's been through. So you're bringing a story to the population. You're no longer just saying a new purple and black ikat print for sale. So just the understanding of what is the difference between a product being sold and a story being told makes all the difference. That's it. So product sellers have to really become one with their content. And for people who have a very huge team and for whom this is not possible, you have to train your social media managers to do this. So it should not just be, here's a bunch of photographs, put them up on Instagram, write the captions, and then track the insights. Because anybody can do that. And unfortunately, even the age of the influencer is slowly waning. There was a time when only celebrities people would reach out to only celebrities for branding, advertising, hawking their products and things like that. Even just today, this morning, I was reading this beautiful article about the owner of MDH, who passed away at the age of 97. And I believe he was asked, why don't you use Bollywood stars to promote your masalas? He says, so what's the point of that? He says, I'm perfectly happy promoting it myself because I am sourcing the ingredients, I'm grinding the powders, So he's got a very familiar, that red turban, that pearl necklace and those glasses. So he was the face of the brand, literally and otherwise. He says, I'd never felt the need to reach out to Bollywood stars to promote a product. So what would they know about the hard work that has gone into it? So first there is the product, then there is you, the person who's doing the work. Then there is how you package the product, brand it, and you start talking about it. Then there is, of course, value of the product is extremely important, meaning you really have to make sure that the product that you are selling is of the highest caliber. Because the minute that happens, people will buy it, and more importantly, people will start telling other people about it. To date, a lot of my clients find me through word of mouth. A lot of my clients don't find me through Instagram. They may hear about me in general through Instagram, but Instagram is not for getting clients. Instagram is for building visibility, building connections, and generally using it as a space to find other ideas. That's it. It is not a marketing platform. It is by nature not a marketing platform. Marketing has always been word of mouth and will continue to be word of mouth right through. So whether you're selling a service or whether you're selling a product, word of mouth is extremely valuable, extremely important. And that is why my focus has always been on building connections, not follower numbers, building connections. It's another problem that I have with the word follower itself, because it implies that we are leaders and people are following us, which is incorrect. We're all in the same boat. We're all together. So unfortunately, and just like I remember this beautiful book I read recently, it's called Enough by Patrick Rohn, I think. And he says there is this 4-letter word that I'm going to stop using. We don't realize it's an abusive word. We don't realize it's a bad word, but I'm going to stop using it. And he says the word is user. He says it's the worst 4-letter word in the marketing lexicon. And he says it's because we're assuming, and that is what they call druggists, right? Junkies.
Correct.
They're called users.
They're called users.
Why are we calling the people who are using platforms, who are using our services, why are we calling them users? Why don't we call them clients? Why don't we call them connections? Why don't we call them customers? Why don't we call them friends? Because the very semantics of the word users is extremely negative. And
the commodity almost. I think we have a lot of interesting insights for those of us who are running a business, building a brand, kind of trying to grow and not get overwhelmed in that process because of so many other things that you need to do apart from the core business that you're trying to create, right? One thing I'd like to touch upon is there are so many folks out there who would be listening who are not in this solopreneur game, but they are in a good organization. They've been working there for a while. They're middle management folks or senior executives, and they are also overwhelmed. They're also in this feeling of there's only 24 hours. I've got like a really full day's job, but everybody says be a learner, network, create communities, be part. This just seems to be so much else that's asked of me. Are you there on LinkedIn? Are you a thought leader? When am I going to do all this? Where's the time and energy going to come from? I also have only 24 hours. So any words of wisdom for them who are not, and for them, the other side, right? The business folks, it feels like, yeah, you guys can talk about intentional and slow and pacing yourself because you don't have the regimen that a full-time corporate job comes with, right? So any thoughts on what they can do? Because they're being asked to do the same thing in different ways, right? Become the thought leader, be out there, etc.
I wholeheartedly agree. It's a very different landscape for those who are having 24/7 or 5-day-week full-time jobs. It's not going to be the same. However, there is one thing that I would like your listeners who are in that space to consider, and that is the fact that you can never do everything that you want. Whether you are a full-time worker or whether you're a part-time worker or a self-business like me, you can never do everything that you want to do. And this was an insight that was brought home to me with incredible clarity through the book 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman. It's a fantastic book, and I definitely recommend that your listeners pick it up, either listen to the Audible version or pick up the paperback.
I just finished the Audible myself. Yeah.
So I love the way Berkman says, you can not possibly finish everything on your to-do list because the implication is that you can fit it in when you can't. It's just impossible. So the first understanding is acceptance that you cannot possibly do everything at once. That's the very first thing. The second thing is learning how to prioritize what truly matters to you and not just what matters to the world. So the world may say meditate, run, walk, read a book, and things like that. But do you want to make the time to meditate, run, walk, and read a book? Because if you don't want to do it, all of the advice, all of the recommendations, and all of the insights from self-development books and gurus are going to be just that. They're going to be tips and hacks, which you're just reading, passing it by. And there's nothing wrong with that either. So the question here is, what are your priorities? For instance, I know a working woman. She's a working mom. She has a full-time job with an MNC here in India. But the one thing she never compromises on is her reading habit. She will not compromise on her reading habit. She says, even if it means I'm spending my entire weekend staying home, not stepping outdoors, but only reading books, read 3 or 4 books every weekend, she says, I will make time for that because nothing gives me more joy, even more joy than my job, than reading a book does. So what do you say to? So you can say, oh, but you're not making time for exercise. You can always make that woman feel bad saying, oh, you're not making time for exercise. How can you feel fulfilled? But she says, you know what? Right now, exercise is not on top of my mind. Right now, my mental health is on top of my mind. My peace of mind is priority. And that I get through books. So that is the thing that you need to know. So if you decide that you want to do something, it should be something that you have decided to do based on your level of priority, not on a priority level imposed by society. That's the very first thing that I would say. So number one, let go of the understanding or let go of the expectation that you can do it all, because nobody can do it all. It is impossible. There will always be something which you will not be able to finish reading, something which you will not be able to finish doing. The idea is to say, oh, I could not finish doing it, but not with guilt, but just a sense of acceptance. That's the first thing. Second thing is prioritize what it is that you want to do based on what it is that you want to do, not on what society wants to do. That's extremely important, because once we do this, and here's the very interesting shift that happens. Once you start focusing on things that you want to do, you notice you will slowly get pockets of time to do things that are expected of you as well. For example, one of my things every single day is my walk. I just will not compromise on my walk. My family knows. My family knows that, the clock strikes 8:30 p.m. She'll be out the door 8:30 to 9:30, 10. She's out walking. But that means for me to finish my dinner by 7 o'clock, because I need an hour and a half gap between dinner and. So I don't expect anybody else in the family to do it. For me, it is, I'm going to have dinner ready on the table at 7. Anybody wants to eat after this, they can heat it up, they can eat it, they can do whatever they want with it. But my role and responsibility ends there. If I were to get into micromanagement mode and start saying I have to be there at 8:45 when my family is eating dinner, heating up things, then my schedule is also going to go off track. Okay. The second thing I started doing was, once I started prioritizing spending more time with books and less time on the phone, almost automatically my TV watching habit dropped. So I was watching too much. I was maybe watching 1.5, 2 hours a day. But ever since I stopped making the phone a priority and I started reading more books, interestingly, my TV habit is completely stopped. I just don't feel drawn towards it. So all of these things take time. We don't realize it, but all of these things take time during the day. So we may say, I don't have time, I have a catering business, I have to keep my house clean. Yes to all of that. But the question is, what can you, if you remove a little something from your life, you're making space for something else. What do you want to remove and what do you want to make space for? That I cannot tell you. That has to be the decision of the person who is actually living that particular day. And believe me, I know for a fact that women with very young kids have a very different situation than women with grown kids or teenagers, because most of those situations, kids are self-sufficient. You're not running behind them. You're not taking care of things. But having said that, there are still things that even a woman with a very young kid can do. At that point, though, her priorities will have to shift and probably revolve a bit around the child and the child's needs. But it's not always going to be that way. And that's something I want people to remember. It won't always be that way. It will become better as time, goes on.
I think that is important, that there are phases. So what is your priority today? What's important today? What's taking up your time today? That's not permanent. And to add to that, if like you said, if you acknowledge that I can't do all 20 things in this phase of my life, right? Maybe a few years later, I will do 2-3 of the things that I want to do. This time I will pick something that fits in with what my schedule is now. Makes it easier on you, everyone around you, and I think it also gets done.
Exactly.
It's been wonderful. I can't believe we've been chatting for an hour.
I know. I just looked at the time myself. It's amazing.
Lovely. Again, wonderful to have you. A lot of beautiful insights. And I think importantly, you do really, really exude this feeling of how you can be calm, you can slow down and not lose out on anything at all. And you only have lots to gain, right, in
Absolutely.
Today's world. So thank you for sharing that so authentically with all of us as your audience, not followers, but your audience.
Thank you for making that distinction. I really appreciate that. And thank you so much, Subha. It was an honor to be here. And I hope your listeners enjoy listening to this particular episode as well.
Great. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening till the very end. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you'd like to leave us a note about the episode, please do write in at connect@raincraft.in or drop us a voice message at speakpipe.com/raincraft. All the details about our guest today and how you can find us on social media are available in the show notes. So please do have a read and catch you next time.